We'd like to welcome you to our third, I think that's right, Tim, isn't it? Our third Kiwi seminar. And we have 5 speakers today, and I'm going to kind of give you a little overview of how we got into this adventure and a few of the world players that are involved. Our second speaker is who, Ann? We don't know. They're running off the agenda right now, but we have Malcolm Turner, who spent some time, he's my technician, he spent some time in New Zealand and some time in China. We are on a TDA, USDA Specialty Crop Block Grant. We've got, here comes the agenda, and we've gotten 4 years of it, and I work very closely with Tim Hartman, who's a Texas AgriLife Extension Program Specialist, and has just really been a joy to collaborate on this particular project because... Say that now. And I'm a Texas Aggie. I graduated in '78 there with a PhD. I worked for Texas A&M, but I decided to move to an institution of higher learning. That's a joke. That's a joke. I love Texas A&M, and they have the resources to really get a lot done. We will later on have an evaluation. We encourage you to take home one of these bags of Golden Sunshine, let it ripen on your table, and sample them. And there's a little questionnaire in there. We got 110 last year, and we're trying to get over 100 this year to see how people like them. How many of you have eaten Golden Kiwi? So probably a little more than half. Which is good. Last year, our respondents, only 20% ate Golden Kiwis. So I'm going to start it off. And who's our second speaker? Don? Oh, okay, good. And we have David Anderson next, who's our produce contact, and he works at Anderson Produce. He owns Anderson Produce and moves product all over the country, and has been a follower of this project. He went to New Zealand with us, and kind of our eyes and ears into the national market and how it moves around. So, Golden Kiwi fruit, is it an opportunity or a headache? And we haven't totally made our minds on that. But we have had 4 crops out of 6. And that's encouraging if you've ever been in the peach business. I used to be in the peach business in Shelby County for about 17 years in the 70s and 80s. And I learned a lot about freezes, if some of you, and because they bloom early, and we're blessed that kiwis do not. So this is where you're at. We're in a zone 8B. That's how you spell Nacogdoches. And Tim, if you could get the light, it'll be a little less glaring. And we're really here primarily because of the golden kiwi and as opposed to the green kiwi. The golden kiwi is typically thinner skinned and you can eat it with the skin on. I do. Some people don't. About 70% thought it was okay to eat it with the skin on. There isn't any doubt about the increasing popularity of kiwis. It is a category that's growing, and the golden is one of the more faster growing parts of it. This adventure started in 2011. I put this up here primarily to show you that we did not know, and still don't a lot of ways, what we were doing. We didn't realize that this crop is so heavy, and it can produce 40,000, 50,000 pounds an acre. Add in the weight of the vine, add in the big leaves, add in a rainfall, and you really need to engineer your structures for about 70,000 pounds. So it was okay in the early days. We had a 3-wire. I don't know what we were doing. Basically, all of this came about because of this gentleman right here. This is Dr. Jay Spears at Auburn, Alabama. He's a friend of mine, and he came here to give a talk, and he handed us 30 vines, and he said, I want you to grow them. Don't propagate them. Don't distribute them. Just see if you can make some fruit, because it is intellectual property. These are patented by Auburn. Half of the royalty goes to... Oh, I'm confused about it, but some of it goes to Hubei Fruit and Tea Institute in China. The fruit, actually, these varieties have been here since the 1990s, and were a graduate student of Dr. Norton who brought them in, and basically in 2007, these were moved into a patent world. So the question is are we going to go commercial? Is it homeowner only, or is this just like the biggest failure you've ever seen? And I don't think we're going to be a failure. We do like to think that it could certainly be a homeowner crop. It's just some getting it into the trade is a little difficult right now. I'd want to recognize Malcolm Turner, who's my technician on this project since the early days, and he's partly funded by the grant and has had, he'll talk to you about his experiences in New Zealand and China. And there's my buddy Tim Hartman looking at $1 million in the sky, I guess. And Malcolm is wondering if it's quitting time for the day. I'm not sure, but it does show you our structure that we kind of threw together after we realized that we had such a heavy weight to deal with. Here's the planting plan, basically Golden Dragon and CK3, Golden Sunshine and Tiger, and our row 1 is greens, A.U. Fitzgerald and Arthur. The first crops were basically out of Golden Dragon, and it's because CK3 works. So you have a male plant and you have a female plant, but it has to be the right male with the right female. This is a problem. It's not like college kids. Basically, you end up with this world where the timing is absolutely perfect. And it's not a very big window when a flower opens and it's able to get pollen. So this is Golden Dragon, which is not considered to be a commercial crop because of its shape. What you want basically is an oblong shape, and Golden Sunshine is the second crop, and it does fit that bill. And that's what we have over here for these bags is Golden Sunshine. And we are convinced that we got some pollination over in the next row from CK3, and our Tiger, which is a male, is a failure at this location. We just haven't had good flowers on Tiger. We do have a recognized drop issue. Some of you know apples, and some crops will just throw fruit in the summer for whatever reason, and this shows you some of the drop we've had. It's in the 10 to 15% category, and we consider that a big problem for the future. So we have one other variety, and it's Gulf Coast, and this is our first crop of it, which we picked in early September, and I think Clint has brought some Gulf Coast. Is that right? Is that Gulf Coast? Gulf Coast here, and it's basically a Golden Sunshine sport that doesn't drop. And then the green, we've not had very good luck with the greens, even though we do make a little bit of fruit. Our relationship expanded. This business is small. The Kiwi group, they heard about us, and basically Miko Asia is based in New Zealand, and they've come here many times, and they're looking to have a play in the southern Gulf South, and Texas may be it. It may be somewhere else. And they have a relationship all over the world with different places in Chile and in South Italy and in China and back in New Zealand, and Ross Stevenson and Murray Malone. And basically, we have a red, so I don't know who dreamed this up, but I think it's awesome. We could have a stoplight series in the future where you have red, yellow, green. Boy, that would be something, and that's part of it. These are the Miko kiwi fruit varieties that are under trial here. We got them in December, and so we are backing up these plants. And the first two are greens, and you can see the weight of the fruit that they have here. And the bricks relates to sugar. And then the next four, FY45, 94, 112, and 133, these are at SFA. And we have a trialing agreement with them on it and trying to find a world for these in the future industry if there is to be one. This is CY38. It's a bright green and has good size to it. And the New Zealanders reversed this. So this was a picture taken June the 10th, not October the 6th. So just for y'all to know, that's how the New Zealanders do dates. And then this is ML585, which is a very large green. FY45 has been not so vigorous for us in our one and few plants that we have now, but it is a yellow, and we have a green yellow in 94. This plant failed for us, and it is stuck at USDA Beltsville, Maryland. We lost this plant here and in California, but it is backed up, and we'll get new plants in the later on this next early spring is what USDA is telling us. So you have to go through a 2-year quarantine, folks, on this genetics. And we work with Joseph Foster at USDA Beltsville, Maryland. He's been great in helping us. And we also have some other fruit in as well up there. FS112 is good, healthy, vigorous plant, and these are all yellows here, FS133. So we have 9 varieties that are 9 selections that we have opportunity to study, look at, and see their potential in the future. Pollination is the big issue. The female to male ratio, that's debatable, and your configuration is debatable. But this may be the way to go. Buy your pollen in. It's 5,000 a kilo, which will do about a hectare. Is that correct? Okay, so $500, you can go through there with an ATV, and you can take care of your pollination needs. Still good to have bees around. I learned that last night from Clint, because the bees will move that pollen around on the flowers as they work. So we're excited about it. So this is golden dragon flowers, and if you look at the center of it, you'll see the white stigmas. That means it's a female, and it's a beautiful little flower. And then this is the male, and if you look closely at it, there is no stigma. There's nothing there. It kind of dies, and so that makes it definitely needing cross-pollination to make it work. And that's CK3, and so far this has been the only male that has actually functioned for us. Well, this is our yields. This is how we harvest, and I want to warn you ahead of time, we did not do a good job pruning, and we have refused to bring the plants to what I call good structure, primarily for one thing, is that we don't want to go in there and cut too hard, because we need fruit to satisfy Texas Department of Agriculture, to be honest with you. We didn't want to cut out a year just to get these plants in shape. So we're slowly doing it, kind of rejuvenation pruning in a way, and it's been a lot of fun. So we've started, that's our crop last year. We're just now finishing up this year. We left one vine unpicked for y'all to look at this year, and we'll get that data into the 2019 data set. But if you go through the years on Golden Dragon, so our first crop was in 2014, and we picked 144. The Aggies said it was a fluke. My good buddies there, Dan Lineberger, said it'll never happen again. And then 2015, we had 875 pounds. So it was pretty amazing, actually. It was just raining down. And then the Aggies came on board, and we're now excited about cooperating to see where this goes. And then we had less than 50, but look at the chill. We had less than 460. We also think there's some other pruning structure issues that we have here. And then last year we had 398 pounds on the Golden Dragons, and this year it's about 350 pounds.
What's chill mean?
Chilling hours is hours less than 45 degrees in the winter to satisfy the plant. So an apple like a Golden Delicious needs about 1,100 hours less than 45. That's from November till February. And so we have a little tool we use to, a little USB thing you throw in the orchard, and it'll make you a graph. It's really cool, and then you just count the hours. So when you have, we think these Golden Dragon Sunshines are 800, 900 hours. Tim will talk about that. So to satisfy a chilling requirement is very easy. When you have a mild winter like we did in 2017, they didn't want to leaf out, to be honest with you, but we can use some chemicals to add another 100 to 155 hours. There are some, what's the name of it? Hicane or? Yeah, it's hydrogen cyanamide, and Clint will say a few words about that. So Golden Sunshine's a little bit different because we didn't have any yield on it. We blame it on pollination, but in 2017-18 we used pollen from Doug Phillips in California, applied it by hand, and we got a yield on it. So it was a fine crop that way, so we're excited about it. Our evaluation form, which we want to fill out, this is last year's, only 5%, I was wrong, had eaten golden kiwi before on 100 and some odd returnees. Average rating was good on a 0 to 10 basis, 8.75. 70% thought it was okay to eat it with the skin on. Some people don't agree on that. And 62% preferred the golden over the green, and 95% they would definitely buy them. They are available, and David Anderson brought in some of the sun golds that we have in the stores today. Probably the last of the New Zealand. Is that what we're looking at, Clint? sun golds we see today in the grocery store.
It can sometimes run into October, November. They're getting more and more shelf life. Where are you at?
They're in a lot of grocery stores now. They're at Kroger's over here. They're $2.99 a pound and $3.99 a pound. So it's an expensive crop. Just go to the fruit section and they'll be in these little clamshells that you see here. I'm going to go through some of the world issues here, kind of an overview, and I always say time spent in reconnaissance. It's not just going on vacation in New Zealand. It's trying to study and learn what we're looking at on a global basis. And so the big kiwi fruit picture is California, Texas, Alabama, China, and Chile. That's for this presentation, and then New Zealand down there. And New Zealand is about 35 or 40% of world supply. They're serious about it. You go to New Zealand and their farmer feed store is kiwi supplies. It's not like here, which is cattle. So it's exciting to look at what they have in the industry. Hubei is really the home in China of the Golden Dragon, Golden Sunshine, and goes back to the early 1990s. I visited there in 2016 and really a little later on. And this is their Fruit and Tea Institute in typical China. And this is Zhejiang, who broke the genome on kiwis at a young age of about 38, and was published in Nature, which is, she's a rock star because of that. And basically, we know the genetics of it. And this shows you some China field plots and how they grow them on overhead. And they do a lot of breeding, folks, and that's lining out kiwis and waiting several years before you see fruit and then picking the ones you think are best. And at Wuhan, they have a kiwi research unit, which is nearby, and basically they have, it's kind of a part of a botanical garden, but they have a wonderful collection of genetics at Wuhan, 50-something species there. And this is one of the species called Macranthera. These are some of the private farms in China, Zhejiang province and Ning'ai, which is southeast and really good. This is kind of typical and shows you that this is kind of a bottomland species. Likes good drainage, but needs to have moisture. And that's complicated. So everything you see in China in this stream is kind of channeled sideways. We were at the breeding program of Changsha. This is Dr. Wong, and he has about 20 acres of 20 hectares, about 45 acres of just breeding. And this is not for production. This is just for breeding. And there's Ross Stevenson and my wife, and we're excited about it. And you see Ross is looking at a load of kiwis. This is where our next arsenal of kiwi fruit varieties, we hope, come from. And Dr. Wong owns the intellectual property on it with Miko Asia, and now Top Fruit in South Africa. Because it's China, everything's concrete. 60% of the world's concrete is being poured in China. They create these forms on the farm, and boom, you have a really sturdy, long-lasting. New Zealand definitely does drive the boat. And we were at Rotorua, and this is my good friends from Texas A&M on a trip that we made. And Ross Stevenson was our host for this. He's with Miko Asia. He was the largest shareholder in Zespris, which is a big group on the block. And this shows you some of our Texas people out there looking. This is David Alders and Lee Hill and Murray Malone, and we're looking at some of the kiwi fruit production in New Zealand. We'll talk about a TP, and a TP system basically is one angle on growing it. Anytime a vine is growing up, it's having a tendency to make fruit buds. There are about 2,700 growers in the Zespri group and farmers, and they have about 40,000 acres of kiwis, and they produce in this area. It's thought to be about a $2 billion crop for New Zealand, most of it destined for exportation. And it's New Zealand, and they have a milder climate than we do, but they also have wind, and as a result, the crop justifies putting up these screens here. You can use different kinds of screens. Land is 30, 40, 50,000 an acre. Just to get a license, it's expensive. And most of the farmers that we ran into seem to be pretty pleased with their income on it. So there's not as much gold, but gold is growing, and gold is considered to be the new kid on the block. And some of the practices they do is 2 times per year girdling. What does that do? It increases the set, and then about 6 weeks ahead of harvest, it does increase fruit size, and it does show you the age of these. These can be 100 years old. They're not like a peach tree. It's a long-term investment. Well, you basically make a ring around with a knife, a girdling knife, and that stops the carbohydrates produced in the leaves from going to the roots, and it stacks up in the top of the tree, the vine, and causes the fruit to be bigger. Then it heals and it goes back to normal. So it's just a temporary boost in fruit size and carbohydrates in the top of the plant. And you'll see some of these that have been girdled dozens and dozens of times, and they respond quite well to it. There is a disease. We don't have it. We might get it, but it's called PSA, and it's devastating. And a lot of varietal changes in New Zealand and rootstock changes as well. So resistance is out there, and management is out there, and when the New Zealanders come, they wear boots and gloves, and they change their clothes and burn them afterward. I mean, they're very tense about bringing PSA into this USA production. So far, so good, we don't have that. It's a bad disease, and it's worldwide. It came from China, ended up in New Zealand, so we're always on the lookout and worry about it. It can be managed, but if we can keep it out, it's much more important. Folks that pick peaches and blueberries, look at this. You can pick 350 to 500 pounds in an hour. So that's pretty good because it's a strip pick. You just pick everything. And when the bricks hit 8 to 10, you're out there working away. And so I was quite impressed with the speed of this. The processing, this is Sika. And you can show the seriousness. This place moves about 1 million trays a week, and these are all destined for cold storage and then funneled out to the world. And Zespri manages to kind of have a control on the supply. Thus, it's $2.99 to $3.99 a pound in our grocery stores. California is the sole place for green kiwi fruit, and some golden coming into the picture. And we were in Yuba City and Marysville. I ran around there in the Selma and Reedley region as well. This is Doug Phillips' operation. There's 10.9 million 7-pound trays for Hayward and 1 million for the non-Hayward and the golden varieties. And there's Doug Phillips. He's our friend and friend of Ross Stevenson. Gives you some idea on the acreages. Those of you that want to look at this, we're going to have a video that'll be online. We'll send you the link for all of the presentations. This is the problem with golden in California. Too much light, too much dry weather. You can't hardly grow them. They have a tendency to shrivel. So there's such money in it that you can put up a large shade cloth and be on your way. And some misters as well to keep them cool. When you're looking at 40, 50, 60,000 pounds an acre and a couple of dollars a pound, you can do the math, students. There's some economics here that we're not used to. And so these are primarily rootstocks that will be grafted, sprawled the first year and then grafted the second. Gives you an idea of some of the structures. The 18 feet is unnecessary, don't need to go that high, but bees don't work unless it's 18 feet tall. Doug Phillips discovered that. When it's 12 feet tall, the bees underneath that huge block, 20 acres, run to the edge and die. They don't understand it. They can't georeference. And basically, 18 feet they will work, but they couldn't find their way back to the hive. Doug Phillips is a cowboy. He found out that if you go down to Lowe's and buy 5-gallon buckets, different colors, put them up on poles, that within 1 hour, he said, the bees were able to recognize, georeference, find their way back to their hive. Bees are smarter than your average college student, maybe. I was impressed with that. Think about that. So this is Doug in one of his green kiwi fruit orchards that he has there. He's a wonderful, wonderful cooperator. This is Mike Nolan, gives you a few figures. 30,000 an acre out there, folks. Water is a nightmare. Their labor issues are incredible. It is California. Rules, regulations, and taxes. And so you come to East Texas, a lot of them didn't even believe that we have $3,000 to $4,000 to $5,000 an acre land. They thought there was something, is that like a rent? No, you can buy land in East Texas. And Mike is talking about 30 to 60 tons per acre production. And so he's obviously suspicious of our land prices here or something. He does a wonderful job with the TP system. We'll explain, Tim will give you a little idea. This is Jerry Kluwer's orchard, and I haven't seen this fruit, but it's a new fruit. It's a mega kiwi. And this is I would crawl 2 miles in the mud to get this thing to Texas, but it's primarily destined for other locations. But that's a real kiwi, a Texas-sized kiwi. Sun Pacific Burn Evans is a big player in California for green and gold as well. He's starting that, and he's basically kind of the behind the scene, the supporter and creator of the Reeltown, Alabama orchard that we'll talk about later. And it shows you the extent to which they'll go, high canopy, misters, et cetera, to try to produce golds in California. Just got back, or in March I went to Chile, met with Ross and Murray down there, and basically it's all near Santiago, and they have a huge industry, about 180,000 metric tons, and nearly all of it destined for exporting. And they're growing Dory, which is a part of, I'll show you a picture of him later. 40% go to Europe, 15%, and this is the boats that they load them up on. They put a technician there. It's a big old roll-on, roll-off cargo box, and it's got cooling on it, and they just monitor it all the way across the sea. From Houston to Asia is about 28 days, going through the new Panama Canal. There is our trip. This is Giampaolo Del Pani, and he's from Italy, and he's the father of Dory. And Dory is a big deal in the gold kiwi world. And we've got this fruit finally in the USA in quarantine at Beltsville, Maryland. And because of PSA and rainfall and a lot of different things, there's some real issues in Chile as far as producing the fruit. Gives you some idea. My wife is a vegan, so she just thinks this is the best trip in the whole world, and we had a great time. And production was just incredible on the orchards that Miko Asia is involved in Chile. Lots of water needed for this crop, and they're using drip lines in this particular case on both sides of the stem. And finally, there's the Alabama connection. And that's why we have Clint here today. We're so pleased to have him as a guest because he has more experience. He really ought to take the whole morning, actually. And this is the Gold Kiwi Group, Southeast Kiwis. And I was there a few years ago and have been back. And there's Clint telling us, he spends most of his time just counting buckets of money. And it's really an exciting new crop. And this is an incredible endeavor in Alabama. My conclusion is we have these wonderful cooperators from Northeast Texas. I see Renee McCracken here. We have James Wilhite at Tyler. Nacogdoches, College Station, Texas with Tim, and then Simonton with the Twinwood bunch. And so we're looking at it. And we think that it's best to have some acid soils. We certainly know we need drainage. The whole chilling issue is a question mark to us. Tim will talk about that. And we also know for sure you'd have to have decent water. And some wells have a burden of sodium, calcium, and magnesium, and it's a problem. It's the same problem that you have with blueberries. They do need high-quality water. We've had, when you have production 4 out of 6 years, you think, okay, there's some optimism. It's been encouraging. It's been a lot of fun. Everybody's available for harvest day. I can promise you that. Weeding is a different story. This infrastructure, whether we go steel or wood, we're looking closely at our next expansion being in drill stem and working with wires, et cetera. And infrastructure is not cheap. It might be much less than that, but that's kind of an outside figure. It depends on how you put it together. So 20 to 30K per acre for one of these structures. And irrigation, this is a high water crop plant, 8.80 T compared to a peach, which is 0.2, 0.3. You really have to flow some water. And you might need to set up a system where you can do 48 acre inches per year. We do need more varieties, folks. I mean, we've got an arsenal here, but we certainly need some more males, and we need to take a look at what's available to us out there in the trade. Grafting on a rootstock, you can grow them on their own roots, and ours are on our own roots out here in the original plots, but a good rootstock is probably the best strategy for the long run. And these are Brunos, and we're working with Bruno seedlings. And we went through 2018 about 10 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 nights. Some of you remember that January freeze, and we lost half of them. But it's a good thing, folks. These are seedlings. The ones that died, we don't want them. The ones that lived are seedlings that have some hardiness issues about them. We're looking at getting Bounty into the research program as well. Folks, this is serious. It's not here, but it is in Alabama. I'm sure Clint will say something about brown marmorated stink bug. This is a bad critter. SWD is in Texas, spotted winged Drosophila, and it's just now hit our blueberries for the first time. These are some gifts from Asia. And basically, it's a problem. We have had some scale, probably due to our pruning technique, but it's too crowded, too dense, and as a result, but this is easy to take care of with some dormant oil or superior oil. But brown marmorated stink bug has been identified in Texas in 7 occurrences, has not hit our fruit orchards in any extent that we know of, and it's a real problem for the future. This is a Tim Hartman at Texas A&M January that we went, got cold as the devil, and that's a problem, these midwinter hard freezes on young plants. I underline the word young, because once they get old, they seem to get a little hardiness. Our technique was to wrap the young plants in chicken wire and stuff them full of pine straw, and it seemed to work. And this winter, Tim and I are going to be looking here to do some trunk wrap studies as well to see how to get these young vines. It's a miracle that our original plants never suffered any of this. It's probably because we didn't know anything about the plant. And so we had no cold snaps of that duration or that intensity. Pruning and training, Tim will speak to this. There's TP systems, there's all kinds of systems. And basically, you do need a single trunk to 6 foot or so and a cordon, and from there, you're developing your fruiting canes, and we'll talk about that a little later. Chilling requirements, still confusing to me, and Tim is finishing his PhD. He graduates in December unless there's a big problem. And basically, he's really done a lot of work with material at Texas A&M looking at chilling requirement. Good drainage, acid soils, I think that's kind of your goal when you're looking at growing kiwi fruit. This is in China, and I'd like to thank you. Are there any quick questions before we have David Anderson? Okay, David.
On the marmorated stink bug, David, what is the recommendation in terms of managing that?
Well, we don't have a restricted use. Kiwis are so new, there's no pesticides. They haven't got registered. So in Alabama, and Clint will talk about that, they got some emergency permitting.
That's right. We were able to get 2 Section 18s for a pyrethroid and a neonic. There is a sauna and some organic products like pyganic and pyrethrum, which do have some knockdown, but it's pretty low, and I'll talk to that.